What does education mean to you?
To me, education means opportunity, the chance to learn about new things, to try new things, to go in new directions that you never expected.
Education means finding something you're passionate about and having an opportunity to polish your skills and enjoy doing it for the rest of your life.
The process by which we figure out who we can and should be.
Education is a universal right, where inclusivity and equity take center stage. ProEd was born of the belief that high-quality educational expertise can transform a society for the better. We believe that education is for everyone, not only for the privileged. With these noble objectives, ProEd is dedicated to offering a range of exceptional products that cater to the diverse needs of our clients and meaningful nonprofit initiatives for the community. Our comprehensive services include curriculum development, teacher training and professional development, and educational operations. We offer innovative solutions such as SCOS, a comprehensive framework for teacher evaluation and professional development. SCOS goes beyond traditional observation models by focusing on genuine student-centered practice, placing students at the true heart of teaching and learning. Complementing this framework is a curated library of video-based lessons designed to be practical, accessible, and motivating. These resources support teachers in reflecting on their practice and continuously enhancing the quality of their teaching. At ProEd, our commitment goes beyond products and services. Through our CSR initiatives, we regularly provide free access to the latest and most practical educational expertise, helping promote educational equity and nurture a culture of lifelong learning in society. One of our key initiatives is the EduVerse PD platform, an open and freely accessible professional development hub for educators around the world. Today, EduVerse has grown into a global community of over 8,000 educators and followers from more than 200 countries, with engagement and collaboration increasing every day. Within EduVerse, we offer a dynamic range of professional learning platforms. EduVerse webinars, thoughtfully designed for passionate educators and led by experienced experts from around the world. EduVerse newsletters, a curated professional resource featuring insightful articles, expert interviews, emerging trends, and practical strategies to enhance teaching practice. EduVerse podcasts, the world's first educational podcast hosted by AI. Our AI hosts Liz and Andy bring fresh perspectives and engaging conversations to educators everywhere. And through our EduVerse Facebook and Instagram channels, we share cutting-edge professional resources, classroom tips, and daily inspiration to support teachers in their journey. Through our signature ELT camps and GBG training days, ProEd delivers high-quality on-site training to educators across Vietnam. These collaborative programs have welcomed hundreds of participants and are highly regarded for their practical impact and excellence in professional development. In 2025, ProEd and EduVerse hosted Edu 361 Expo, a pioneering 48-hour nonstop global conference. The event united 120 international experts in an immersive 3D environment, featuring workshops, AI debates, and interactive panels. Attracting thousands of participants from 100+ countries, the Expo's 5 strategic tracks were designed to spark dialogue and reimagine the limitless future of teaching and learning. Our global network now includes over 40 respected educational organizations, many recognized as leaders in the field. These strong partnerships have been instrumental in our growth and recognition. In 2023, at the Asia Education Awards ceremony in Bangkok, Thailand, ProEd was honored with 2 prestigious awards: Excellence in Educational Consultancy and Innovation in Education for our flagship framework, SCOS. ProEd Education Solutions, your partner in shaping the future of education.
Welcome to EduVerse's 17th webinar, Language and Communication Coaching, Practical Routines for Real-World Impact. I'm Gülbin Özdemir, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today. Before we dive into our main topic, let me introduce our esteemed presenter, Mr. Barnaby Griffiths, UK/Spain, is a teacher trainer and consultant in language and communication coaching with over 20 years as a TESOL diploma tutor. He is the author of Language and Communication Coaching, the Essential Guide, and focuses on helping learners develop real-world communicative competence. Now, a word about EduVerse, the driving force behind today's webinar. Powered by ProEd Education Solutions, EduVerse PD Network is a platform for global educators to share and get shared all about education. EduVerse is committed to providing educators with invaluable learning opportunities and resources. From monthly newsletters on cutting-edge educational trends to live webinars every 2 months, we're dedicated to your professional growth at all free of charge. Now, are you ready to help your students communicate more confidently in real-world situations? Whether you're teaching traditional lessons or exploring new approaches, this webinar will equip you with simple routines and structures to seamlessly build students' communicative competence and confidence. After the webinar, please take a moment to complete a short survey to help us serve you better. After that, you will receive an email with instructions to download your certificates within 1 day. Without further ado, let's immerse ourselves in this enlightening webinar. Feel free to ask questions and observe all you can from this session. Thank you all, and we're so happy to have you all here. And Barnaby, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gülbin. Excuse me. I should warn everybody, I have a slight cough. So I may stop occasionally and drink some water, and I may cough occasionally, but we should be okay. Let me share my screen with you, with the presentation, with the webinar. Just check that that's working okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's
You
okay.
see that? That's fine.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's begin. So my name is Barnaby Griffiths. I have a language consultancy in Spain. I'm originally from the UK. I'm from Manchester in the north of England, where it is very rainy. So I live in the Mediterranean in a place called Barcelona, where it is very sunny and much nicer. And I've been living here for over 30 years, but I have traveled a lot in the past. When I was younger, I was in Indonesia for 2 months. I was in Thailand for 3 months. I was in Malaysia, and I lived in Japan for 2 years, which is where I started teaching English for the first time. So I've traveled quite a lot, but I ended up back in Europe, in Spain, in Barcelona. And I have this language consultancy, although actually that sounds quite a big thing. It's only me. I am the language consultant, and I outsource work, training work to other people, but it's basically just me that doing the language consultancy. It's not some big company, it's only me. So today's webinar, number 17, is about language and communication coaching, practical routines for real-world impact. Okay, at the bottom there you can see my email address. Feel free to email me with any questions you have. You can also see my website and even my phone number. Well, I don't guarantee that I will answer the phone. I will answer any emails that you send to me, okay? So let's get started. I have been doing this for more or less 30 years. And when I say this, I mean supporting language teachers. I was a language teacher myself for a long time. I now consider myself a language and communication coach. So I have learners who I still actively coach. But I'm also a teacher trainer. And so for a long time, I used to observe teachers, as you can see from the photos, that type of thing, observing teachers teaching English. And I also used to give them feedback on observation of their classes. I used to train them and prepare them, help them plan their lessons, help them evaluate their lessons, etc., on the certificate, the Trinity certificate course, and also on the Trinity diploma course, which is the more advanced version of the certificate. I've been teacher training, giving workshops, giving trainings for probably about 20 years now as well. At the bottom, you can see a photograph of me in a language school giving training there. So I do plenty of training and lots of language and communication coaching. And in my opinion, language and communication coaching is the future of where we are headed as language teachers. Let's take a quick look at your expectations. So this is what I received before the webinar, and this is some of the things that people said. I expect practical routines and strategies for immediate classroom use, helping students speak more confidently and fluently, making classes more engaging and interactive, moving beyond grammar to real communication, supporting real-world language use, making progress visible and measurable. Ooh, lots of things here. And many of you are asking for practical ways to improve communication for your learners. So it's not just about more activities, it's about better outcomes, better results. And that's exactly what I'm going to focus on today. So I'm going to try and basically answer all of those things for you in today's webinar. That's because that's what I think language and communication coaching does. As you can see here, I've written a couple of books. One is The Essential Guide, and the other one is Language and Communication Coaching for Groups, because many people asked me whether coaching was only for individual one-to-one classes, and it isn't. It can be used in groups quite effectively, and that's what I'm going to try and show you today. So this is my approach to what I call language and communication coaching. It's a blend of the most effective techniques in language teaching. So I've basically taken all the best things of 30 years of observing teachers, and I've tried to put them into this approach that I use, the best teaching techniques, but also the best acquisition techniques. So there's a whole theory on language acquisition, how we learn a language. And basically, I'm a language learner myself. I speak Spanish, I speak Catalan, I speak German. I learned Japanese when I was in Japan. I studied French for almost 10 years, but I don't speak French. And that kind of tells you something, I think, because the way that we traditionally learn languages is not conducive to learning to communicate. And this is kind of my point. Okay, so I also look at language acquisition techniques in language and communication coaching. Another pillar of the approach is oral skills development, so developing the speaking and listening skill. And finally, life coaching skills. So I've done life coaching courses and I incorporate coaching techniques into our teaching. I think that will improve how our learners communicate. And that is my idea after basically over 30 years in English language teaching. So language and communication coaching, which I will abbreviate to LCC. My LCC approach reflects my own theory of language learning, which is meaningful repetition of second language patterns constitutes a much more effective and holistic approach than more cognitive-based language learning methods. In other words, I myself, at my age, I have been exposed to many language learning methods which are cognitive-based. They're all about thinking about the language, working things out cognitively. And in my opinion, repetition, meaningful repetition of patterns is actually a much better way to learn how to communicate in a language. And I'm going to try and show you that today, okay? So the issue is this, the problem, the issue that we're facing as language teachers. Many learners know a lot of English, but they can't use it, when it matters. So it's not a lack of input, it's a lack of what I call structured communicative development. This is what we're looking at today. And a core idea of this is what's missing is a bridge between knowing and doing. So I have observed hundreds of hours of teachers in classrooms teaching about English and their learners learning about English. But that does not translate into performing in English, communicating in English. That's what we're looking at. This is what I would call the core shift, the change that we need to make. LCC is not about designing even more classroom activities. We have lots of classroom activities. LCC provides a structured approach to develop communicative competence through performance. These are words I will use a lot. Communicative competence, this is what we want from our students. We want them to be able to communicate competently in the language. How? Through performance. Now, performance is a word, again, that I will use a lot, and I will go on to explain in a second, so that you understand what I'm talking about. So what does it look like in practice? The core shift. LCC is based on what I call the proof framework. So that I've come up with this acronym of proof: performance, rehearsal, observation, organization, and feedback. Today, I'm going to show you how these work together in real classroom routines. So how this proof framework can be used to create classroom routines for communicative exercises. Okay, let's go. P is for performance. So the key message here: communication improves when learners perform with a clear outcome or a communicative goal. So many speaking activities that we use in the classroom may be a bit vague, but they need to be specific. They need to have a communicative goal that our learners are working towards performing. And I will go on to explain what I mean by this much more clearly. But first of all, let's focus on the idea of a communicative goal. After a speaking activity, the learner should be able to give a clear statement of the outcome, such as, we found out this. We found out that most of us think this. Or some of us agreed that, but others believe, Or over half of us can do this, but the others can't. These are statements in English that our students should be able to make after a speaking activity showing what they have learned. But importantly, they should be able to do this fluently and accurately. And this is what I'm trying to get to with the idea of a communicative goal. How do we design communicative outcomes? Now, there's a list here of 10 types of speaking activity. This is nothing new. This is basically from course books. If you're a language teacher, you use these all the time. These are how speaking activities work. They are these types of activities. But my point is, we need to be able to look at an activity like this, and we need to be able to decide what the communicative outcome is. And I'm going to give you some examples. Now, I know that this workshop will be available as a recording afterwards, so I'm not going to stop and give you time to write things down. I don't think you need to. You can always come back and revisit it, okay? So I will just move through the slides, knowing that you will have time to make notes later. So, what are communicative outcomes? First example was decision-making activities. Well, if you're doing a decision-making activity, the type of outcome you're going to see is learners at the end of the class saying, or at the end of the activity saying, we decided that these were the best movies of 2025, and then giving you a list of movies, for example. But they need to be able to use the language from the activity fluently and accurately. We'll come back to this in a second. I'm just going to give you all the examples now. This is not, again, not so important. They're just examples, and there are lots more examples, but you will be able to get these later. Problem-solving activities. We worked out that the problem with X is Y. Opinion activities. 10 of the 12 students in the class believe that. Information gap and exchange. Maria explained how to make spreadsheets using AI. Narrative activities, description. Anna told us about her recent trip to Mexico, where she... Now, this is a good example of where students should be able to retell. Retelling is a very important part of a speaking activity. Retell what they've already been told. But again, how many times do we do this type of activity in class? And when learners have to say at the end what has been said, they can't do it accurately and fluently. And this is the main point I'm trying to make, and we will come to the reason why in a second. Role play simulation activities. We learned how to summarize sections of our CV for an interview. Collaborative construction. We planned a weekend trip to the mountains, including Evaluation and judgment. We recommended the following main courses for a dinner. Speculation and prediction. We predicted who would win these different sporting events. Clarification and repair. We came up with a list of instructions for using this AI tool. You get the idea. As language teachers, you know that these are communicative outcomes of speaking activities. My point is, we do not normally make them important enough or specific enough or clear enough, but that by the end of the activity, learners are actually able to do this, because that was the point of the activity. Normally, they will simply have done the activity, but they won't be able to do it as well as we need them to do it or want them to do it. You can email me if you want a full list of these communicative outcomes, because there are lots of ideas here. But as I said, I'm not going to go into them now. Just send me an email if you would like more on that. Here's a key message when it comes to performance. Performance here refers to the learner's ability to produce language accurately and fluently to achieve the target communicative outcome. So we need to have the target communicative outcome clear in our minds as teachers when we begin the activity, because by the end of it, our students should be able to say those things fluently and accurately. How often do your learners actually successfully do this? This is not a criticism. This is simply an observation. I have observed hundreds of speaking activities where the teacher's aim was to practice a certain language element, a certain item of language, and at the end of it, the students could say something about that, but they couldn't clearly and fluently relate the target outcome of the speaking activity, because we have not focused on it correctly. And this is one of the points I'm trying to make. Performing in the language is a challenge for anyone. We all know this. It's always a challenge performing. And by performing, I mean just talking in any communicative context. Some people find performing in their own language a challenge, let alone in the second language. And so what does this mean? In my experience, watching teachers, observing teachers, when they see their learners struggling with performance, and we're all familiar with this, we see learners trying to produce English and they're struggling, they're finding it difficult. In my experience, they do one of two things. Either they highlight it, but that makes the learner more self-conscious and less likely to perform, because in front of the class, the teacher is telling them they can't do it. Or they ignore it because the learner's discomfort makes them also feel uncomfortable. Okay, so these are the two most common reactions to learners not being able to speak English. But this is precisely what our learners need from us as language teachers or coaches, the solution to their discomfort when performing in English. And what is that solution? That's why we're here today. Rehearsal. As you can see at the top of the screen, the R in proof is for rehearsal. My key message here, 1 or 2 attempts is not learning. It's simply destined for failure. If we say, now try this once or twice, it's not enough to develop communicative competence. Rehearsal is the missing link in most speaking activities. The typical problem is learners do the task once or twice, and then we move on to some other activity in the textbook. We need to replace this process with meaningful rehearsed repetition, which I am going to elaborate on in this webinar. The R is for rehearsal. The rehearsal cycle is that the learners attempt to use the language. They then adjust their use of the language to make it more communicative, more fluent, more accurate, and they repeat. And this is a cycle that goes around and around and around. We don't only give them one or two chances to say it correctly or fluently. So in the idea of rehearsal, there is a practical routine to all of this. The same task with a better performance. Round one, the learners attempt the speaking task. Then they receive structured feedback. There's a structured feedback round, which is input from the teacher or the coach. Round two, they improve their delivery. And again, this is a routine. It goes round and round. It's a cycle. By doing this, and don't worry, I'm going to give you examples of this. By doing this, fluency and accuracy improve, confidence increases, learners see progress. If we just give learners the chance to speak once in the class, to do a speaking exercise, and then we correct them and move on, that is not developing their speaking. That is simply giving them the chance to say something they already know and maybe include some new words, but it doesn't really give them the chance to develop their speaking ability. Okay. But what do I mean by teacher coach input here? What am I talking about? I'm talking about feedback. F is for feedback in the proof framework. So the key message here, feedback should improve the next performance, not just evaluate the last one. I have spent, again, many hours observing teachers giving feedback on what just happened. And it is basically evaluating what happened, but it is not leading to any improvement in the future. Now, I've just seen that there's some in the chat. I think there's something in the chat, but I can't actually see it. I don't know if you want to tell me, Gulbin, if there's anything I should be answering, by the way. I'm just continuing through my slides here. Oh, there it is, chat. Hang
on. There is a question, actually. If you want to answer it now, you're free to answer. We're going to have the question and answer session, if you'd like.
That question. I see the question is about joining the webinar, though, so I can ignore that, right?
Yeah. Don't worry.
I ignore that one for now. Okay, good. Okay, I'll continue going. I did mean to say at the beginning that there is time at the end for questions. So I'll give you plenty of time at the end to ask me questions, and I will answer them for you, okay? So back to the webinar. F is for feedback. So feedback should improve, not just evaluate. Hang on. In LCC, I use what I call communicative impact feedback. So it's not just about correcting. There are two layers of this. The primary focus is communicative impact, clarity, effectiveness, listener response. In other words, did the message land? When the speaker was speaking, was the message clear and effective? Did the listener understand, follow, able to respond? The second layer is language. Now, this is something we're used to doing, correcting the accuracy of language. In basic terms, did they use the right words? But that's only half of the feedback we want to give. We want to give communicative impact and language feedback. So, communicative impact feedback. Let's have a look. Instead of the idea you need to use the past tense, which is a very typical teacher response to correct a learner when they're speaking, the timeline wasn't clear to the listener. This is a clear communication focus. Now here, I'm not saying this is what you need to say to the learners, but this is what you need to think as the teacher. This is not just about language. This is about communication. The important thing, the important message that the learner should get is that they weren't clear. and therefore they weren't understood. But if we put that in terms of, I'm going to correct your use of the past tense, it's a different message. Hopefully I'm being clear with that, but I will go on to show you more examples. So that should come through. What's the difference? What's the difference between focusing on language correction and focusing on unclear communication? Learners stop thinking, I made a mistake, I'm a bad language learner, and this is why many learners don't really react to correction. It creates a very negative feeling of, I've done it wrong, I'm a bad language learner. And they start to think instead, I need to learn to communicate my message better. This is a positive message, not a negative message. This small shift, this small change in focus and practice by the teacher has a huge effect of the message that the learners receive. I should say on the message. So the learners receive a different message, and it has a massive effect on how they behave in the classroom. They are looking at their communication. They're not thinking, I can't speak English, I don't know the grammar. Okay. Feedback still, key message. Don't correct them, show them how to communicate better. This is one of the ways in which a coaching approach will improve your teaching, because coaching is all about improving how people behave, how people do things. It's not about correcting their behavior. Okay, this is the message I'm trying to get through about coaching. So there's a feedback loop. Basically, after feedback, that is not the end of the story. Again, very often in classes that I have observed, learners do the speaking activity, they might get some correction, and then they move on to the next activity. That's not what works. That's not effective. What is effective is to have an immediate repeat performance after the feedback. What can we do as teachers? We can give a selection of focused points on the impact and the language, but a selection. We don't need to correct everything. We simply need to look at what impeded communication, what made communication less effective, and we need to work on that. But we don't need to correct everything they say, and we certainly don't need to correct things that do not cause an obstacle to communication. We're looking at giving feedback on their communication. Also, as teachers, we can model good communication for our learners to imitate. As I said at the beginning, I think we best learn to speak a language by imitating patterns. Now, if the language teacher can model good communication and say to our learners, we can demonstrate the intonation, the stress, the pronunciation, the good language, the good grammar. If we can do that, then basically our learners can imitate that and learn from that. And it's not the same as correction. We're modeling good communication. But don't expect immediate perfection. Do demand improved performance. We should not expect our learners to suddenly speak perfectly, but we should expect them to improve their performance every time we've given them a speaking activity and we have demonstrated how to do it well, we've given them some feedback, and we've given them another opportunity or opportunities to do it. We will continue. It's the feedback loop. So the aim of proof in the LCC approach is learners work in a loop going round and round. Performance, observation, feedback, rehearsal, task repetition. They repeat the tasks and the focus is on their performance in the language through the observation and feedback from the teacher or coach and rehearsing. This repetition is basically rehearsal. It's what actors do. They don't learn their lines immediately. They have to say them again and again. It's quite natural to say language more than a few times to learn how to say it, not just once or twice. This makes improvement visible, and the value of feedback is measured by observable change in performance. So our feedback to learners should bring about an observable change in how they communicate. At the end of the speaking activity, our learners should not only know more English, but they should speak better English. At the end of the activity, not next week, not in a month, at the end of every activity, they should already be speaking better English. So, key message, learning accelerates when learners notice performance, not just language. If, as language teachers, we focus only on language, then the learner is receiving the message about being correct all the time, about being accurate all the time, about thinking about grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation all the time, and they're not focusing on how well they deliver the message, which is really key to good communication. So how do we decide what feedback to give? Well, now we're looking at the, excuse me, now we're looking at the O's in the proof method. P was for performance, R was for rehearsal, F was for feedback. Now we're looking at the O's. The O's are for observation and organization. Organization really is the overall idea of organizing how we do all of this. We're going to focus on observation right now. So instead of was it correct English? And again, maybe I'm repeating myself here, but I think it's worth repeating myself because the message is worth repeating. And it's not something that teachers are used to hearing in my experience. So instead of was it correct English, the teacher or coach observes for whether the message was clear. I'm going to give you more examples of this. If the message was clear, if the answer is yes, that learner gave a clear message, then we can highlight that as good communication. This is part of the feedback. Part of our feedback is good communication. Hey, Antonio said this. That's perfect. We could all say that. Let's everybody say that. That was very good, Antonio. Well done. Great communication. That's how you say it. This is what we want to say in this situation. We highlight good communication. If the message wasn't clear, then we highlight ways of improving communication. Okay, now I've been talking for half an hour, and I'm going to ask you, what do you think? Sorry, let me ask the right question. If we want to highlight ways of improving communication when we observe our learners speaking in a group situation, what do you think we're focusing on in terms of ways of improving communication? What are we focusing on? And the answer is not going to be language. Language, remember, is the other part of communicative impact feedback. Now we're focusing on something else. What do you think? Put your ideas in the chat. I'll give you a minute just to do that, and I'll have a drink of water. Right, let me check. Okay, so communication broke down. Okay, vocabulary. Just reading some of the chat here. The goal is to share your ideas as long as one understands it. It's good communication. That's nice, Roxanne. If somebody understands, it's good communication. I would agree. My concern would be progress from the last session. Okay, high school years afraid of being judged by everyone when you use English. That's interesting. Yes, comprehension. At the end of the day, conceptually embedded. Performance of students' vocabulary. Okay, how long is it? Okay, firm performance. What are we focusing on? Yes, that's my question. Well, that's the support. Correct the words. I'm still people still learning. Would you teach to speak without fear of making a mistake? Okay. Let me tell you my answer to that question. Remember, the question was, if we want to highlight ways that our learners can improve their communication, which are not simply language-based, because we all know how to give correction on language, don't we? If somebody gets the wrong words, then we correct their vocabulary. If somebody gets the wrong grammar, we correct their grammar. If they get the wrong pronunciation, we correct their pronunciation. But I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about something more than that. Ways of improving communication is when we give a different type of feedback. So when we give feedback, as well as language, we also give feedback on, for example, pace. What does pace mean? Pace means, are people speaking too fast or too slow? Now, I have lived in Spain for 30 years, and it's a cultural thing, but people speak very fast. I lived in Japan for 2 years, and it was a cultural thing that people spoke very carefully and quite slowly. Now, interestingly, Spanish people focus more on fluency, and Japanese people, in my experience, focus more on accuracy, saying it correctly rather than fast. Now, whenever somebody speaks and communicates a message during speaking, we can either say to them, that's perfect pace, or it might be too fast or it might be too slow. I like to use what I call a gears analogy. Gears as in the gears of a car. First gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. And I like to say that, for example, I'm speaking to you now in third gear. And the reason I'm speaking to you in third gear is because this is a presentation, it's a webinar. But if I was speaking to my friends, I would be more closer to fifth gear. And if I was just having a formal conversation, maybe in the staff room at work, it might be fourth gear. And second gear would be this pace, which is actually too slow for people to remain interested. That was me demonstrating second gear. First gear, you would use with a child, for example, when you speak very slowly. But the idea is you can tell people as a teacher, as a language teacher, if they're speaking too fast or too slow, and show them how to improve the pace, either faster or slower. And just to go back to my example, in this country where I live now, in Spain, I spend a lot of time telling people to slow down. And when I lived in Japan, I told people to be less concerned about accuracy and to speed up and speak faster. And it's okay if you make mistakes, because it's better to make mistakes and go at a good pace than to go too slowly and lose interest. Okay, that's just one example, pace. Another example, delivery. What do I mean? What do I mean by delivery? Emphasis, pausing. So when we communicate, we actually have natural points of emphasis. And I'll give you an example. Talk of emphatic delivery. That was emphatic when I said emphatic delivery. Now, a good example of this type of what we mean by delivery is politicians. Politicians usually speak with very emphatic delivery. Now, we don't need to do that in everyday speech, but we don't want to speak also in a monotone intonation where we just everything sounds flat. So we should know where to emphasize, where to put the stress in a sentence. But learners don't know this naturally in English. They know it in their own language because they're familiar with their own language. But in English, they need help. And therefore, they need us to model the language for them so they can repeat that emphasis, that intonation, the stress, the sentence stress, all of the elements of pronunciation in the language. They need help with their delivery. They might speak perfect English in a sentence, but it's so flat that the message is not clear, for example. Another example is when to pause. So good communication includes pauses. That was a pause. I just left 1 second pause. Good communication allows the listener to digest the information. So these are things that we can focus on when we're giving feedback on communication. Another thing is body language. As everybody knows, body language is a very important part of communication. And we, as language teachers, you might think that's not part of my job, but actually it is, because how people communicate in English will also be reflected in their body language. We're talking about eye contact, facial expression, gestures, posture. If somebody's communicating with their arms crossed or looking in the different direction, we can give feedback on this to help our learners communicate more effectively. And one final example, just to show you what I mean by communication, coherence. So when they're talking, are they coherent? Do they use a good structure in their communication? Do they use good reasoning? These are things that we can talk about in class when we're giving students feedback, okay, on their communication. Now, let's move on. Excuse me, little cough. Why language and communication coaching works. So this type of feedback builds learner awareness. It makes, if we focus on whatever the teacher focuses on, the learner focuses on. So if the teacher focuses on English as a communicative vehicle, which is what it is, it's a language. It's not a subject of study. We can make it a subject of study, but if we consider it a language and a vehicle for communication, then the learners will also start to see it as a vehicle for communication and not something just to get a good mark in. I need to get a 10, I need to get a 9. I need to know the third person. I need to know the third column of the irregular verb table. This is not about communication. That's studying English simply as a language subject and not as a vehicle for communication. We can raise learners' awareness that English is a language for communication and a tool for them to communicate with the real world, because guess what? Most of the world now speaks English. That's how our learners should be looking at English, not as a subject to study, but as a language. And we need to raise their awareness by doing this type of work. Learner autonomy. Now, many teachers say to me, why would I want my learners to be autonomous? And the answer to that question is, when they become more autonomous, they become more active, and they become more proactive, and they start to take action themselves to learn better English. And so your learners become better learners. It doesn't mean they don't need you as a teacher. They will always need a teacher. But becoming more autonomous is a good thing. And they will develop their communicative competence, which is what we mentioned at the beginning. So you will notice your learners being much more active in the class, more engaged in your classes, and communicating more effectively. In other words, this is what you want as a language teacher. You want your learners to become better at speaking English and listening in English. And this is what my approach focuses on. Now then, to sum up, because we're going to have some questions and answers. I can see there are lots of things in the chat, but just to sum up what I've said so far, because we're going to get to some question and answer in a second. In summary, the proof is a cycle, okay? The idea of proof is a simple cycle. Performance, rehearsal, observation, organization, and feedback, and then back to performance. It's a cycle, it's a loop, it goes round and round. This works in any lesson. If we can adopt this approach to our speaking activities, it will always work in any lesson. It doesn't replace the materials. We're not looking at new materials. What it does is it transforms how materials are used. So when we look at our course books and we see speaking activities, we do them much better than we traditionally do them in the language classroom. Okay, So today's takeaways before we have our question and answer session. Takeaways for today. If learners can't clearly say what they achieved, the task had no real outcome. Sorry. One attempt isn't learning. Improvement comes through structured rehearsal with the language. 3, feedback should change the next performance, not just evaluate the last performance. 4, communicative impact matters as much as linguistic accuracy. So this is something, again, I'll go back to my experience in Japan, where basically the learners and the teachers were very much focused on perfect English. And the actual level of communication was very low because people did not develop fluency. They were too focused on accuracy. But communicative impact, as somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, if the message lands with the listener, I've achieved my goal, even if I've made mistakes. And also, let's not forget, when we speak our own language, we make mistakes. It's not about the mistakes. It's about communicating. Progress is visible when learners actually perform better. That is my basic premise with language and communication coaching. So the question is, how do you build this consistently into your lessons? Well, I mean, the answer is fairly obvious, and it's training. Now, I have here a special webinar offer for people. I run courses online, and I have a special offer for you here for people who've done the webinar. I have several courses online. One is a full course for becoming a language and communication coach, but most people don't need that. Most people just want the techniques. And I have one course, which is the Language and Communication Coaching Core Practices course. It tells you all of the techniques I've been talking about and more. And there's a workshop price, which is a special price until this Sunday, which is 99 euros or the equivalent in your own currency. Now, I am aware that 99 euros is a large investment for many language teachers, but that is actually 50% off the normal training price. And the training includes over 50 video lessons of language and communication techniques, coaching techniques, and over 100 video clips of me coaching my own learners. So there's a lot of stuff in this training. And if the price is, is too much for people, which I understand for language teachers, maybe schools are interested in training their teachers. Maybe you could ask your school or your university if they're interested in having some training, because I have these courses online, and I also do online training like this. And also, if you join my training from this webinar that we're doing today, I'm also including a free coaching session after the training with me to talk about language and communication coaching for you. Either way, I hope that today has already given you some ideas, whether you can do further training or whether you're interested or not. I hope it's given you some further ideas that you can take into your teaching. There is a link there on the page for you, and there's also a QR code. You can get the access there. Another thing that I do is I have free resources in my monthly newsletter. So you can join my newsletter by going to my website. It's free. There's a QR code there, and there's also my email address if you want to join my mailing list. And also if you want to, well, I was going to say if you want to receive the slides from today, but actually they're going to be made available on the EduVerse platform, so there's no need for that. But if you do want to email me at all, that's my email address. And finally, I also run a weekly online teaching and language and communication coaching clinic, which is free as well. And teachers bring their real classroom challenges and we work on them together. So it's a little bit like today, except people ask me direct questions and then we work on it in a teacher training environment. So you can join teachers who are already doing this by using language and communication coaching to develop the communicative competence of their learners. Again, if you email me, I'll send you the link to join us, and that's once a week on a weekly clinic. Okay, so questions. Now, I have a couple of questions that I'm going to answer because I always get asked these questions. First question is at the end of a training session. The first question is, isn't coaching only one-to-one? So this is something that I've realized many teachers don't associate the idea of coaching with groups. And therefore, I'll send you back to the beginning and show you I've actually written a book about coaching for groups. So it can be done with groups, and hopefully today I've showed you that it can be done with groups. But if you wanted to look further into it, there's a book on it, and it's not an expensive book. You can find it on Amazon. If you put my name into Amazon, or if you go to my website, you'll find it as well. But basically, there are books. I've written a book about for groups, so that's the answer to that question. And the second question that I get a lot is, can language and communication coaching be used with children? Now, the answer to this question, again, is yes. And I'm going to show you a comment from a language teacher in the United States who wrote to me after doing my course online, and she told me all of this. So I'm going to share with you some text with you now, and I'm going to give you a chance to read it. She said quite a lot, but I've tried to edit it down to make it clear. Can language and communication coaching be used with children? This is the opinion of an English teacher a Spanish teacher in the United States who uses my method in the United States with children. So her name is, she's happy for me to use her name. Her name is Kayla Gerardine Acosta Avellaneda. And this is from December last year, and she's in the United States. This is what she says about using this approach with children. One aspect of this module that I found especially important is it's extremely powerful when applied with children. In my work with young learners, coaching does not mean mastering the language, but rather listening deeply to students, following their curiosity, and planting the seed of interest and confidence in language learning. Now, I imagine this is resonating with people who do work with children. With children, we're not looking to just produce we're trying on their interest in language learning. By practicing active listening and responding to children's interests, emotions, and questions, I can apply coaching skills in a developmentally appropriate way. Okay, all of this she got from doing my course online. And she also said, this helps shift the focus from performance pressure, feeling pressure, to curiosity, engagement, and meaningful interaction with the language. For me, language coaching with children is about nurturing motivation, self-trust, and openness to communication, not linguistic perfection. And she finished by saying, this is particularly important in foreign language contexts like mine, where Spanish is not part of students' daily environment. In these settings, progress is not measured by fluency, but by increased willingness to communicate, curiosity about the language and culture, positive emotional experiences with learning. And now she finishes, this module reinforced my belief that traditional educational mindsets should evolve towards a more coaching-oriented, learner-centered approach, especially in elementary language education. So I found this fascinating, is that basically I developed this approach from observing teachers teaching adults, but she is saying that from doing the course, she found it very useful for teaching young learners and even elementary language education.
So thank you all for joining us today, and special thanks to our esteemed presenter for his inspiring presentation. We trust you've gathered valuable insights and practical ideas to bring real-world impact into your language classrooms. So thank you, and before we say goodbye, help us enhance your experience. Please take a moment to complete the post-webinar survey, which will pop up after you leave this webinar. So I'm telling this again, before we say goodbye, please take a moment to complete the post-webinar survey, which will pop up after you leave this webinar. Download the instructions for your certificate that will be sent to all webinar participants within 1 day after you finish your survey. Let's look ahead to our next exciting webinar. Set a reminder for Friday, 12 April 2026 at the same time, 8:30 p.m. Vietnam time. We'll be diving into another engaging webinar with Barnaby Griffiths, a dedicated TESOL, TFL educator from Indonesia, on a very timely topic on using AI in your teaching, from static to app, transforming traditional worksheets into interactive digital experiences. Stay tuned for the detailed information and registration updates on your EduVerse platform and media and in our newsletters as well. And don't forget to join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram for more updates and practical teaching ideas. And before you go, don't forget to download EduVerse newsletter 26, our latest edition, published last month with valuable resources and practical ideas for your classroom. Please find all the information on our website, proed.com.vn/eduverse, totally free. Finally, we're calling for articles for our July special edition on student-centeredness. This edition invites you to pause, reflect, and reimagine. What does it truly mean to place the learner, not just at the center, but in motion as well? Your story will change the world. Don't hesitate to send your story to us. Limited space available. We truly appreciate your active participation and look forward to reconnecting with you at our next event. Keep that flame of learning alive, and until we meet again, take care and stay curious. Thank you and have a fantastic weekend.